All right, let's talk about something that sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. 3D printing our food. Seriously. And believe it or not, this wild idea is actually moving from the lab into real kitchens way faster than you might realize. So let's just ask it outright. Could your next steak, or maybe that intricate dessert you've been craving, actually come from a printer? Well, the answer is this really fascinating blend of high-tech engineering, culinary art, and some pretty big questions about the future of how we all eat. And that's the key right there. This isn't just about robots making bland food pellets. No, it's a new frontier where cutting-edge tech and real culinary creativity are starting to meet on the very same plate. So, to really wrap our heads around this, here's what we're going to do. First, we'll break down what 3D food printing even is. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how it works. After that, we'll look at the incredible things you can do with it, and of course, we'll have to separate the promise from the reality. And we'll wrap up by asking the big question, are we all going to have one of these in our kitchen someday? Okay, so let's dive right in. What are we really talking about when we say 3D printed food? At its very core, it's what's called additive manufacturing. Think of it like a regular 3D printer making a plastic model, but instead of plastic filament, the printer uses edible ingredients. It literally builds the food from the ground up, layer by tiny layer, following a digital blueprint. And, this isn't some brand new concept that just appeared overnight. The journey really began way back in 2006. That's when researchers at Cornell first managed to print simple stuff like chocolate and cheese. Fast forward to 2018, and you've got companies like Meat creating really complex things like plant-based steaks. And today? Well, today, the applications are just exploding. So how exactly does a computer file become, a delicious meal? The process itself is actually surprisingly straightforward. It all kicks off with a digital design, a CAD file that basically tells the printer the exact shape it needs to create. Then you've got to prepare your edible ink. This just means blending your ingredients into a smooth paste that the printer can handle. Finally, you load that into the machine, hit print, and it just meticulously builds your food layer after layer. Now, the most common way this is done is called extrusion. The best way to picture it is to think of a super high-tech pastry chef piping icing, but with robotic precision. A syringe-like head pushes the food paste through a tiny nozzle to create the shape. And it's popular because, well, it's pretty simple and it works with a whole lot of different ingredients. But extrusion isn't the only game in town. There's also something called powder bed fusion, which is amazing for desserts. It uses a laser to fuse powdered sugar into these incredibly complex shapes. And then you have binder jetting, which sprays a liquid binder onto powdered ingredients to build things up. It's super efficient and great for things like baked goods. Okay, so now let's get to the really cool part, the real-world applications. Because this technology is so much more than just a neat gadget for chefs. The potential here is absolutely huge. We're talking about creating meals with exact nutritional values for athletes or patients in a hospital. It can take pureed food and turn it into appealing shapes for people who have trouble swallowing. It allows for the creation of sustainable meat alternatives, sometimes using things like algae or insect protein. And of course, it can create these mind-blowing designs that a human chef could never replicate by hand, all while cutting down on food waste. And don't for a second think this is just some small-scale novelty. The industrial side of this is already showing some serious promise. I mean, take a company like Meat. They can turn out up to 500 kilograms of their plant-based steaks per hour. That's not just a concept, that's a real production solution. But of course, with any amazing and new technology, there's always a gap between the promise and the reality. So let's talk about the hurdles that 3D food printing still has to clear. The promise is incredible, right? Less waste, total customization, sustainable food. It all sounds perfect. But then reality hits. The machines are expensive, production can still be kind of slow, the variety of printable ingredients is still a bit limited, and there are all these regulatory and safety hoops to jump through. But maybe the biggest challenge of all is us. And on that topic of cost, just a basic 3D printer for plastics can run you anywhere from $200 to over $700. Food grade, specialized printers, that's an even bigger investment. And that's a pretty big barrier for small businesses and, your average home kitchen. This really is the crucial question, isn't it? Are people actually going to be willing to eat food that comes out of a printer? I mean, there's a natural skepticism about technology in our food. We worry about authenticity, quality, and hygiene, and those are major hurdles the industry absolutely has to overcome to get people on board.
Which, of course, brings us to the ultimate question. Where is this all headed? Is this just a niche technology, or is it truly the future of how we eat?
By the year 2050, the world's population is expected to hit 9 billion people. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And feeding everyone sustainably is one of the biggest challenges we face. Technologies that can create nutritious food efficiently and with less waste, well, they might stop being a luxury and start becoming a necessity. Think about it like this: the microwave oven. It was once this weird, futuristic box, and now pretty much every kitchen has one. Some experts think 3D food printers could follow that exact same path, becoming just another everyday tool we use to make our meals.
Look, the technology is still evolving, for sure, but the possibilities are just staggering. Just try to imagine a future where your kitchen printer downloads a recipe, automatically adjusts it for your specific dietary needs, and then prints a perfect, delicious meal using sustainable ingredients. The question isn't just if this will happen, but how it's going to completely redefine our relationship with food itself.